Hey, Chuck.
Alexa, turn office white.
All right, let's see. Hello, Art. Let's see who we're missing. Bob's on. We need Jim. John Curtis.
Oh, what the fuck is this?
Are you back home, Art?
I haven't left yet.
Oh, you haven't left yet.
Well, I left and came back and I'm gonna leave again one of these days. Yeah, I'm back home. It's a long story. You guys don't want to hear it. I'm leaving on the 20th of October, maybe.
October.
Yeah.
So was his first trip? Did you go up to Wisconsin?
Yeah, well, I went to Iowa, Illinois. I did not meet with the chief, but he was in town. Was it last week before? We had a few moments.
Okay. Hey,
The
Scott.
ex-chief, not the new chief, the ex-chief.
Okay, looks like we've got everybody now. John Curtis is on. There's Scott. There's Jim. All right, it's 6 o'clock. Let's get started. It's good to see everybody. This is September 20th. This is going to be a work session for the City of Council of Idaho Springs. So let's get started at 6 o'clock. And we're first going to hear from the Historical Society and Visitor Center update. And I believe that it would be the director, Tracy Stokes, and who the superwoman of the Historical Society, Janice Bowen. Good to see you.
Get two for the price of one here tonight. I'll back off.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello, Mayor and Council. Thank you so much for the opportunity to meet with you tonight. And I know that you have a huge agenda, so I'll try to make our update pretty quick. We want to go clear back to 2019. The city improved our restrooms, and they're, if you can call a restroom beautiful, they are beautiful. Since then, of course, we were closed through the pandemic for about 10 months, and we were considered as a non-essential business, so we could not be open. And during that time, we took the opportunity to upgrade the front desk and the whole room that the visitor center encompasses. You have new flooring, new paint, and a brand new moved front desk. So we would like to invite all of you down to see our facility. It's really nice. We put in kind of a round front desk this time, going with the COVID and directing people to the right and around the area so that they can distance by 6 feet or more. Also, we had a lot of opportunities in the background. We worked on a lot of accessioning and a lot of things that don't show, our photo department. And Lou Howard was very, very busy, as you probably know, with the cemetery. And she has kept wonderful records, as well as doing a lot of the physical work of getting up there and correcting and upgrading. And I think that John Bordoni has been involved also with his crew in straightening some of the different plots. There, a lot of the memorials are tipping or falling down, and occasionally we have to tip them back up. So we want to thank the city for all of that. Lou has also done the project of putting all the city cemetery records into a database that she can put on Find a Grave, which is a nationally known, or probably internationally known, source of information for people who are looking up their relatives who've passed. And so that is a huge accomplishment, as well as the archives that we've finished. Donna has done a wonderful job on that. And when you come down, we'll explain all the details of what one page, just one page of that data entry produces. Let's see. We've had a special challenge this year because the Forest Service has not been able to join us. They aren't having any of their people in offices where they contact other people. And so everything that's gone on that the Forest Service normally handles, and we had one staff member every single day when they were helping us. So we're out that staff person. So the Historic Society this year has picked up that lack of staff, but it's not sustainable for the Historic Society to do that. We've have a new contract with the Forest Service for another 5 years. So at some point, we hope that they can come back to us, maybe next year, but until COVID becomes a total thing of the past. I don't think we'll see the Forest Service. So our challenges are not having that Forest Service person and our wages. Wages have gone up extreme in the last year. As we all know, everybody's looking for help. And when we're trying to compete with, say, McDonald's, who's paying over $15 an hour now, we just can't compete. But we're going to try to get a few volunteers coming in, and we do need some assistance, hopefully. And we're here at budget time, and in hopes that the city can help provide a secondary person on the front desk for next year. So that's about it. I want to keep it sweet and short. And we know you're in budget time and you have a huge agenda for tonight. So we do want to make an appointment for you all to come down and see. This is a wonderful building. It was built in the late 1990s, and the history of just the building we can impart when you come down to visit us. So we hope that we can make a time real soon. That's it.
So Jan, have y'all prepared something to bring to the council formally of kind of an ask that you'd be asking the council to look at as we prepare our budget for 2022?
Well, I have in mind something. We've not put anything in writing. In the past, I think in 2019, late 2019, you were budgeting almost $7,000 for a seasonal person. And since we were closed in 2020, we didn't take advantage of that. So since things have increased so much, I was wondering if we could go and possibly double that. That would be.
Yeah, if what we'd ask you to do, Jan, is just prepare something for council so that we all have a copy of that and ask. That's what we do with anybody that is asking for additional participation or something, change of contract. And that's another thing that I'd like to do is renew and take a look at our agreement that we have with the Historic Society and the museum. I think it would be very beneficial for all of us to sit down and take a look at that and how it's structured. What's the responsibilities of the Historical Society, responsibilities of the city, so we can kind of lay it out. I know there's been some questions about sidewalk plowing and parking lot plowing and things like that. So I think we need to get together and renew or take a look and fix, if anything, on that agreement. Okay. We should do that real soon.
And we've been working on that too. So we will definitely get you some written paperwork, and
Okay.
we'll start work meeting with you on the lease.
Okay, sounds good. Tracy, did you have anything to add?
No, I just want to thank Mayor and Council for allowing us to approach you tonight to increase our funding increment going into next year. But I would reinforce Jan's appeal to have Mayor facilitate a field trip. It can be very brief, but I think you'll be pretty shocked about what's in the building. Most people have no idea what we do down there. I know I spent many years living here and had no idea what was in the building. But once we show you the repository of artifacts that we have that are visual to the public, and also what we have archived in storage, I really think that you're going to be amazed about the type of work that we do. And I strongly encourage you to do this soon at your earliest opportunity. So thank you.
All right, thanks, Tracy. Okay, council, do you have any questions for Jan or Tracy?
I don't have any questions, but I was there a few weeks ago and it was just fantastic. So I just like to follow up with the ladies and reconfirm what they're saying. It was really, really a fun afternoon.
All right, thanks, Art.
Thanks, Art.
You're welcome.
Well, thanks for coming out tonight and filling us in.
Certainly.
All right.
Thanks, Chuck.
All right, we will move to our next item on our agenda tonight, the downtown marketplace update and holiday plans. Hi, Sadie. How are you? I believe Sadie and John Kane are going to present this. Just so you know, there has been a group formally formed, and it is ISMA, Idaho Springs Market Association. Is that right?
Marketing Alliance.
Marketing
So
Alliance.
The Idaho. Yep, the Idaho Springs Marketing Alliance. Yes.
And they've been meeting for several months now, and they actually are the ones that, and say with the help of Sadie leading the charge there, of some of the things that they've been doing in our downtown district over this summer. And it sounds like that they have some ideas moving into our fall season, which if you go outside right now, we can start feeling a little bit of that fall air starting to set in. It actually feels pretty nice. So with that, Sadie and John, take it away.
Awesome. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me tonight. And we had a great market on a great summer on the market, as well as a great summer in Idaho Springs with a lot of the activation that you guys saw me present earlier in the year. And so we're moving that activation into the fall season. And so today I went and picked up many pumpkins and all of the fall barrels, or all the barrels that are currently throughout town, not just on the Minor Street Marketplace, but throughout Idaho Springs, will be converted to fall barrels. So there'll be pumpkins and gourds and some really cool fall themed decorations to go with that. One thing we want to kind of talk to Public Works a little bit about is the transition between the summer barrel with the flowers and the fall barrel with the pumpkins. We're proposing that we pull out some of the plants that are currently dead or dying, the flower ones, leave in place the greenery ones that will kind of change color as we transition into fall, and they'll look nice as like a base because they've really covered the ground and the barrel so nicely. So those ones that will transition while leaving those in place, but pulling out some of the dead flowers. I do have some volunteers to be helping me with putting and placing the pumpkins. So however we can pair and help work with Public Works to make that a success as we're going to transition those barrels. I know they've been stopped being watered as often, and so we want to start sprucing them up for fall. We've got tons of leaf peepers already coming our way. We've switched music activation on the Prime stage and the Tommyknockers stage to Saturdays and Sundays. And so we currently have booked October 2nd from 1 to 4 at the Prime stage, October 10th, the Prime stage again from 1 to 4, and October 17th, we're having an Oktoberfest themed band coming in from 1 to 4 on those days. So we have music booked. We have a couple of events that are co-branded with the Rec Center. On the 23rd, the Rec Center is doing their pumpkin plunge. So we're going to be doing the adult themed version of that on the Minor Street Market and doing pumpkins and pints. So at participating restaurant patios, with the purchase of a pumpkin beer, you get a little tiny pumpkin, and there'll be paint kits available provided by the ISMA for people to paint their pumpkins while they're drinking their pumpkin beer. And that's in combo with the Rec Center's family themed activity. So this is something for our residents and visitors that's more adult themed to hit that target market. And then with the fun run that's happening on the 30th, the Minor Street businesses and businesses throughout Idaho Springs that are participating in the fall campaign will be doing come in your costume, get a discount. So on the fun run day, which is the 30th, we're going to be doing that. John Kane and I are working actively together to make the school trick or treat experience that happens on the Friday before Halloween into a community themed trunk or treat on the market. So we're going to have trunks available for participating nonprofits as well as other business owners if they want to come down and participate. Traditionally, the school kids walk up and down Minor and trick or treat. So we thought it would be cool to make it all inclusive to all of Idaho Springs, to be able to bring your trunk down. And then we're going to keep it open longer so that we can get the middle school kids and the high school kids and the community, the homeschool kids. So that's going to be on the 29th, as well as Bruce from Pickaxe is going to be throwing his grand opening year celebration on the 29th. The ISMA was happy to help sponsor that event. So he's going to be having live music. We're also going to be doing a pet parade on Minor. So those are kind of the things that have been planned and executed for the fall. And so we're really thankful that you guys were able to help support keeping the market open. We have some really fun things excited that we'd like to do in November for Small Business Saturday and the tree lighting and all that stuff. So we're really excited to continue to work to activate the city. On that note, my last question would be, I would really like to get some time with you guys to talk about partnering the city and the ISMA for some funding for next year to do some branding, some marketing efforts with the city, really activating the marketplace as well as activating Idaho Springs as a whole. We've got a really great, strong group of business owners and stakeholders that are really invested in helping make Idaho Springs better and better each year. So we'd love to talk to you guys about that as well. Questions? I think that's a lot of information.
No, first I'd like to say thank you, Sadie, for all the effort that you put into this and helping the marketplace along. You have been somebody, the out front person and the leader in this, and we really appreciate that because you've actually the one that brought everything together to make what's going on successful. It sounds like a lot of fun things that y'all are planning on doing. And as we move forward and the discussion on our Monday meetings about transitioning into the winter months and the fall winter months, we need to work together, like you said, to make sure that the transition is smooth and we can make it just as nice and as successful as the summer marketplace was.
Yeah, Mike, I was thinking that maybe they need to formalize the request for funds similar to the Historical Society.
Yes. John? You're on mute.
Sorry, I don't have anything, sir.
Oh, okay. I saw your fingers crossed, so I thought you wanted to say something. Okay, does anybody have any questions or thoughts for Sadie or John about the fall Market Festival? We're gonna come up with a cool name.
I like Market Fest.
One of those, catch names. So, all right, thanks, Sadie.
Hey, Mike, I have a question to you, not to Sadie or John, but how long is the marketplace? Are we going into winter with the marketplace? Are we going to return Minor to normal this winter? What's the date? Are we changing?
Andy, go ahead.
Yes, we did talk as staff about that transitioning. The direction we got earlier from council was to carry it through Thanksgiving weekend. So the marketplace would stay in place through Sunday of Thanksgiving weekend. And then Monday and Tuesday would be the transition days. Those would be the days that the marketplace would be broken down. The businesses would clean up their areas. Public Works would do any adjustments to signs, other cleanup, run the sweeper through if weather permits. And then the goal would be to have Minor Street through downtown completely open both ways with parking on both sides. So that was the direction we were going. If there are any adjustments to that, we can certainly make it. But that was that is the current plan. And again, we've learned over these last couple of years to, as the mayor would put it, have adaptive management, and that's why we meet weekly, and we're happy to make any changes. But that is the current plan for the fall.
Sadie, do you want to?
I would suggest that John Bordoni kept in the loop, and whether any large weather storm prediction might change something, but
Sure. And we can certainly do that. But the falls can be so nice. We're just hoping to carry it through Small Business Saturday and the tree lighting, which is also the Saturday after Thanksgiving. But yes, I mean, if we have a real turn in the weather, and we've done that before, we've made adjustments like that. We have our biweekly meetings with the downtown property owners and business owners. So we poll that group and keep them informed.
So I'm a little confused because I thought that we were going to look at doing something similar that we did last year and seeing how we could do that without having to actually have CDOT bring Jersey barriers in. I know that
I appreciate you so much.
I know that Sadie had mentioned, and I believe she even sent me some concepts of some, I want to say that they're water-filled type barriers that they're using in other communities. So I'm a little confused. John, do you remember where we left off on that?
I'll let Sadie speak to this more. There's actually two pieces that kind of go along with this. So the first is the barricades. I don't know if any of you have been to Golden recently, but they have recently upgraded their barricades to a metal barricade that can stop a vehicle going less than 20 miles an hour, I believe, which is appropriate for a street like Minor. There are some other barricades that we have looked at that are like water Jersey barriers that are colored and other kind of plays on that concept that can stop a vehicle, which is the number one concern. What we've been really focusing on is trying to make sure that we can be adaptive and responsive to the pandemic, not just to public health rules as they are, but also to be sensitive to folks who may not feel comfortable dining indoors. And so we have looked at quite a few concepts like that. Sadie, I don't know if you want to talk more about that or also about potential plans for Small Business Saturday weekend downtown, but I just thought I'd segue to you.
Yeah, so thank you, John. Mayor, you're correct. We've done a lot of research on the business owners, and we really have a lot of the business owners, especially the restaurants, are really expressing an interest in wanting to be able to figure out a way to keep some activated outdoor dining space. That it's really important that we're, number one, ready to change quickly if for any reason the current public health rules become more restrictive, number one. Number two, John mentioned, there are a lot of people that are super uncomfortable still dining inside, and we want to make sure that our community is open and accepting to those people. What communities like downtown Golden have done is they've opened their street. There's two-way traffic in downtown Golden on their main street. They've blocked off cordoned parking areas. So just a parking width, not a whole, like a bunch of space. It's literally like one single table width. They're doing it per restaurant, again, similar to how we have it now or maybe different. John and I have come up with a couple of different options for that maybe we have one in each block instead of a bunch of different. We have common consumption, common areas where the restaurants could make an agreement it would be to-go food. There wouldn't be direct service, but we could make these really cool outdoor areas with some heaters and make sure that they're nice and able to be adaptable for the weather, and just maybe have one each block with these barriers that Golden have that will stop a vehicle. They're nice looking. They're heavy. And we have a contact in Golden that's willing to let us know where they sourced those paneling from. I'm not sure at the cost, but I'd be happy to get that information as we continue to work towards it. But we would like the opportunity to be really adaptable this winter, as well as to continue the flow of being flexible on the Minor Street and using it for many different things. Oh, and then the last thing was the weekend of Small Business Saturday. So that's the weekend after Thanksgiving. We do have the intention and desire to do a Christmas marketplace and to make the tree lighting and the Christmas theme, the opening of Christmas in Idaho Springs. We have some really cool ideas in the works for Christmas here, and we'd like to kick it off kind of with a bang by doing a Christmas market that weekend. So it would really be helpful to have the market still closed fully for that.
Okay, well, I think that we still have some conversations to be had, and I think the best place for that is council, obviously, but also with our Monday recovery task force, and take it from there. Okay, any other thoughts, council? Andy?
Hey, John, would you just give a brief update on holiday lighting and preliminary plans for the tree lighting on that Saturday after Thanksgiving?
Yes, sir. Council, last year in the COVID pandemic, we weren't sure if we should spend the money on the Christmas lights that we had done over the last few years. And we worked with the vendor who gave us a reduced rate last year if we'd go into contract. Turned out that was really good foresight on our part because costs have gone up over 30% in the industry this year. So we're actually getting a really good display for much cheaper than it would have otherwise been. He's planning on installing those lights next month. He hasn't contacted me to mobilize, but once he does, I'll contact John Bordoni just so we can make sure everybody's coordinated. Those lights will go in and then they'll be off until Small Business Saturdays, typically when we turn them on. Though to be honest, the last few years we have turned on City Hall. So we just need to make that decision. Speedy is going to talk to this vendor as well, or potentially there's another one in Evergreen that might be appropriate. That would be a lot of the downtown business owners. Most of them actually are willing to decorate their buildings, which will create much more of a a festive atmosphere on Minor Street. So we're planning on trying to coordinate that work as well. We are going to do the tree lighting like we do on Small Business Saturday. Typically the mayor reads the night before Christmas. Last year was a virtual event, which was okay, but I think we'd all love to be able to have that in person if we could. So I think that's what we're aiming for. At that event, we typically have the high school quarrelers, I think they're called. I don't remember exactly what they're called, but they sing carols and that kind of thing. The kids are there. It's a visit from Santa, which we've already started to coordinate. And I believe we'll see some reindeer downtown this year as well. So I think it should be a cool event.
We will have reindeer, John. I forgot to tell you, we got that confirmed. So Santa and reindeer will be present all weekend, actually, but specifically for the tree lighting.
That'll be great.
All right.
We have somebody that we've worked with who used to work for the rec center and is no longer there as well, who has worked in the Christmas holiday for quite a long time. And she'll be involved too. So we want to make sure this is a really community-driven event and, just fun for our whole community. And it typically is. So I think the last time we held it, it might have been negative 84 degrees outside with 90-degree wind or 90-mile-per-hour winds, but it was still really fun. So we'll still have a good time either way.
All right. Thank you all for that. Okay, we will move to our next item on our agenda. Let me get my packet here. And we have been presented in our packets a downtown special improvement district update, and John and Lindsay are going to present this. Just a little information on this. The downtown property owners have been for quite some time working on forming a improvement district. It started out with a business improvement district. There was a lot of things that had to go along with it. It didn't seem feasible, and then it turned into a SID. And that's a special improvement district. The city has stayed quite an arm distance because this is not something that the city forms or develops. This is a special district formed by a group of people. This group of people happens to be the downtown property owners. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lindsay and John and give us an update and kind of what the idea how the SID would work from here into the future.
Hey, Mike, I'm going to let John kind of take this on. He's been working really hard over the last week, talking with property owners, and I believe a letter has been submitted with signatures. And again, just noting that we pulled everything out related to an actual assessment amount or how and what the assessment could potentially look like as far as front footage. This is strictly just the formation of the special improvement district. Any conversations beyond that would happen later on. So I just want to clarify that, and I will let John take it from here.
Mayor and Council, this effort has been going on for well over a year now with the Downtown Improvement Work Group, who has contracted with CCDC and Downtown Colorado Inc. to look at ways that they may participate in a SID, if one, or any kind of district that was created to help support parking in downtown, as well as other future downtown improvements that they may think would be good for the community. The city has been working on this downtown parking structure since 2006. Efforts really kind of ramped up in the mid 2010 to 2020 range, and we acquired some property that might be used for it and had some setbacks with some other property. Last year, this effort came back to kind of the forefront because we have had such parking issues, especially during COVID, related to parking downtown. And we discovered that we might have an advantage over behind Tommyknockers with the grade change, where we might be able to build a structure that could materially affect parking downtown and really help us out a lot, and build something maybe smaller than we had previously expected. The business owners have been having pretty vibrant conversation over that period of time about whether or not they want to create some sort of district or authority to help pay for that parking structure, and whether or not and what that assessment should be and how it should be created. We originally had a letter that had been circulated a little bit that had a majority of support from business owners that talked about an assessment per 22 linear square feet of storefront. The idea behind that is that it puts the onus for paying more money onto the larger property owners downtown. So if you have a large property, you'd be paying more than if you have just a single storefront. That conversation was good and it was robust. And we found that about a month ago that we wanted to make sure that there was a little bit more conversation and make sure everybody was comfortable with it. We had some initial conversations with the city's lawyer and the business lawyer, the property owner's lawyer, I apologize. And we found that in the creation of a SID, basically you don't need to have an assessment at first. What you really need to do is have a majority of property owners say that they support that SID, and then that assessment can be created after the fact. So what the property owners did is they got together again and they put the letter that's in your packet together. The really important point here is that there will be no assessment created and no financing path unless the business owners agree to it. And so that was really the thing that we needed to make sure that everybody felt comfortable about what we're doing, that we're not putting anybody in an uncomfortable or unfair situation. And also that this parking garage, what we really wanted to do with it is make sure that because it benefits business owners and property owners in the downtown historic district, we wanted to make sure that they had a part in this district, and we kept it off the back of a voter who may just live in the city as much as possible. So this is it's not going to materially affect them quite as much as a property owner and make them quite as much money. And so what we did is we set this letter up so that the property owners in the downtown district would help pay for an assessment that's created. You can see on the signature page, this is surely not all of the property owners downtown, but most of the bigger buildings are represented here. We also have a good kind of cross section of the street on all 3 blocks of the downtown area. In the special improvement map that is included in your packet, you see 2 colors. You have yellow and red. This is the proposed parcels in the district. Now, one thing to note here is that governmental entities can't necessarily be assessed through this district. They could agree to participate in the district. And so what we've done is we've drawn in some of those governmental entities. You see City Hall there on the east. You see the school district property on the west. We also included the resource center property that is on Colorado Boulevard, in the case that it may turn at some point into another kind of property or be redeveloped now that the clinic has moved. That's kind of what I've got for you to this point. I'm here for questions, so is Lindsay. So if you guys have anything for us.
Okay, any questions, council?
I have a few questions. There was between 15th and 16th, there's a yellow piece of property off of Colorado. What is that property? Is that the resource center? That should be red, or
it should be red. It's drawn yellow. That's the resource center property. And I don't know that it's actually going to change hands, but that was why it was included. The lodge property is the one. Oh. And then there's another building that has professional offices in it and a massage studio on 15th.
I just wondered why it was yellow. So right now it should be red, right?
Yes, sir.
And then John, you were saying majority to form the SID, and then there's no assessment until it's determined by the property owners. Is that correct?
It is a fairly complicated process because there's, we need to make sure that the assessment meets the legal requirements of such assessment by Colorado. And so there's review of the assessment record, there's notice, there's a public hearing to create the district. I think that those questions are most appropriate for Carmen, and I'm sure she can outline us a document that would detail our next steps. But the first and foremost step is the business owners requesting the district be formed. And that's what we see here right now. So basically, the way that, I would envision it happening is that once we accept this letter to create the SID, that would basically create a process where the city would begin looking at the plans for what is going to be happening, the specifications, things like how many installments would people be paying on their assessment, which properties exactly would be assessed, just kind of different costs that we would have associated with this district. I think that's the big part. There's a preliminary plan that is created. There's a statement of costs and assessment role that's created by council or for council. And then once all that has happened, then we have the hearing, and then that ordinance would be created and I think recorded with the county is the general process. And that's not necessarily all inclusive, but that would be the next step. And so what we would do is we are very close also on the parking garage. As I said, we've been working on this structure for many, many years. And I think from an engineering standpoint, the project is coming into focus about what the actual cost would be. And so the next step would be to figure out what the actual assessment to the business or to the property owners would need to be. And then the property owners and the city can work together to see if we can come up with an individual assessment that works for everyone or if not. And that's one of the reasons we wrote this letter the way we did. We wanted to give people some assurance that if this project doesn't end up penciling, then we're not going to force it on them. We want to make sure this is something that we're entering into as an agreement.
That's good. So when you say the majority, does a person that has two 22-foot sections get 2 votes, or is it 1 vote per 22 section, or is it 1 vote per property?
In the previous district that was created, they used a structure that allowed for larger properties to vote more because they have more impact and more kind of input in the district because they're going to be paying more. So that was the structure that was used then. I think that has been the most viable legal strategy for the business owners to this point. Although from an internal equity standpoint, the business owners are, that's the property owners should be able to kind of have that conversation internally. And then, it needs to meet the standard of Colorado law. But I think that 22 square feet or the 22 linear feet is what the most equitable kind of idea to this point is, but it's not necessarily the only way it could be done.
Yeah, that previous improvement district, Scott, every linear foot that one owned on Minor Street only, not around the corner at all, onto the avenues, was equal to 1 vote. So okay. It was pretty finely diced as to the impact and the obligation.
So with the letter, with the signatures, you have a majority right now, is what you're saying, right?
I believe so. I think that it's important to note that we have a majority of people who say that they are interested in forming a district, but not necessarily at any level of assessment. And I think that's really important to remember for our community. Our business owners, our property owners are coming together to see if we can solve this problem and fix it in a way that's responsible for everyone. And so I think we've got a really good consensus at the moment among property owners, even some that were initially against this idea, with the understanding that, we're working together.
Jonathan, I had a question. I realized. Sorry, Scott.
Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I just have one more thing, Chuck. So yeah, I totally agree that Carmen is going to play a big part in this because I just think there's some legal aspect to it. And one of those things, how did we determine the map area? If someone says they don't want to be in it, but you've included them, especially the outlying areas, what is it's kind of a legal thing too, I guess, is how do you form this map and determine who's going to be in it?
There is a lot of geographical laws about certain districts, but special districts have some, there's some, I think, best practices and common practices. Like you don't want to shotgun it across a city and say that's a district. You kind of want it to be contiguous. So that's kind of what the intention here was. The other thing is that when you look at our historic districts, our actual historic district, this map doesn't align with that, but it's very close. What we've done is look at the commercial properties in our downtown area that basically can't provide their own parking, their own on-site parking, which is a requirement of Idaho Springs Code. And so for years, we have kind of subsidized parking for most of the businesses downtown with our parking lots. And the city does have costs associated with running those parking lots. We stripe them, we have to pave them, we have to light them, we have to patrol them, you know, all of these things that we do. And so that was a concern as well. So what we did is we looked at businesses that are most impacted by parking, and that's how we drew this map. That's why you don't see the gas stations on the west side of 13th there included in this map, because they don't really, it doesn't impact them the same way as it does one of the businesses between, say, 15th and 16th. Now, there's a couple businesses that are included here that are not directly on Minor, but are still impacted. That's why the Resource Center lot is there. That is a city parking lot as well. So it's also, you know, we take care of that parking lot and all the costs associated with it. The Lodge Hotel is going to be a really great thing for our downtown, and it's going to need to have parking for its guests. There have actually been some questions raised by the business community about whether or not we should include the bed and breakfast and the short-term rentals, which are between 17th and 16th on Colorado Boulevard, as commercial properties that are impacted by this, because our code specifically says they need to provide off-street parking, or they would need to, you know, pay to park in the lots or whatever. So that's a question that has not really been satisfactorily answered, and so they're not drawn into this map. That's how we kind of create boundaries.
I just suggest, you know, that Carmen be brought into that conversation.
Sure. I just wanted to give you an
think would be a
explanation
good
why. I
idea.
apologize.
Yeah, I think you've done a good job of trying to formulate where they should be, but I think we should take legal counsel to kind of make sure that we don't have someone that might object and then cause a monkey wrench in the whole thing, you know?
Sure.
Jonathan, I had the same question that Scott just asked, but I one other follow-up to that is there a ballpark figure that anybody's working with? And my hypothetical would be, maybe I have a bed and breakfast on Colorado Boulevard, and this sounds very interesting, but at maybe $1,800 per 22 foot, might, you know, in this hypothetical might be my breaking point, you know, and I just don't know, do we have a ballpark figure we're working with, or is that just too early in the process?
We aren't too early in that process, but what we are doing right now and what the city has been working on from an engineering standpoint is to keep costs down as much as possible. During COVID, everything has skyrocketed, and there's a lot of things that could be a part of this project that maybe are better phase. Like, for instance, there's likely going to be some sort of improvement around exit 240, just to make sure that we can adequately channel tourists and everyone into the parking structure. So what we've been looking at is can this project be phased? Can we build the foundation here and maybe in the future use different revenue sources or different structures to pay for some of the other improvements? So that's kind of what the city engineers have been doing. What's the base cost of that, you know, I'll call it minimum improvement to make this actually feasible? And we should have that number. I don't know if Andy may have seen it already, but I'm not sure that we know exactly what the assessment needs to be. I do not think that we would ever exceed, you know, there has been a worst case number thrown around, like that nobody wants to pay more than 2,000. That was never the assessment rate. That was just, we will never go over that number. That's the kind of the drop dead for for property owners. I know we will not exceed that number. It could be significant. It could be different. I don't really know. And I think it might be a little early to say for sure what it might be.
Okay, any other questions or thoughts, council? And yes, Carmen will be included. I think she even sent a little email earlier touching bases on this. I didn't read the whole thing, but it came in 5 o'clock, 5:30 or something. All right. And again, just to clarify, this is only to form the district. There's been no assessment or a number to put the assessment. That will come much later. And that will be up to the property owners. The big thing is we've got to nail down, the city has to nail down the total cost of this program for the parking deck. And
Mike?
Yep.
Hey, I did read that letter or a little bit of Carmen's explanation, and I think council does have authority to form this as one option.
Oh, yes. It will have to go to a next Monday night. We will have to take a formal action on it to allow it to happen. So yes, the city is in a position to say that we're not going to allow it or we are going to allow it. Okay. All right. Thanks, John. We will move down to John again. Next one's about our parking management. We've been going back and forth, and we have really been on a month-to-month contract for quite some time now. It's going to be imperative for us to get this contract to a place that is acceptable by both parties. I know that we approved one contract, and then Interstate didn't want to sign it. They weren't quite happy with some things, and we thought they were completely satisfied. So John's been working with Interstate, crunching numbers left and right, doing what's fair to us, because it's got to, there's a lot more that the city does with this parking management than anybody realizes. The number of calls John gets, the number of calls that Wonder gets, and how Zach handles things also. So we want the things that we're doing. We need to be paid, if you will, to help do these types of things. So with that, John, I'm going to let you take over and kind of explain where we were and where we're headed right now with this contract.
Mayor and council, the mayor explained where we were pretty well. We had come to an agreement, and it just turned out that it didn't quite pencil on their side. And so we have been working on it. I noted the changes to the agreement in my staff report. I will just briefly go over them. The first one was termination. It had originally been written at 7 days, and all parties agreed that that's too short. So we are okay with the 60 or 90-day termination. Interstate had suggested a 90-day termination. And so that was the first request for direction I had, is how long would council like the termination window to be from when we provide written notice?
I'm good with 60 days. I mean, if they're good with 60 days, I'm good with 60 days. I think we were giving them way too short a window though before.
Yeah, I agree. 60 is fine.
Okay. The second one was pretty not a big deal. It was just a transaction fee definition. One of the things that happens is if you pay on the app, there's just a transaction fee for the app, and that is calculated and taken from our gross revenue. So net revenue is calculated after you take out credit card fees and transaction fees. So that's why that was in there. The management fee, we had originally agreed when the last time this came to council on a 50-50 split of all net parking revenue, which would again be minus those transaction fees. That included hourly parking rates and violations in that number. Interstate has requested that language be amended to as compensation for the services rendered by Interstate. We will share 50% of the net parking revenue with Interstate and 25% of all violation revenue net of applicable fees. So that's just net revenue. Staff has been thinking about this. One of the things is there's no practical limit on the number of tickets that Interstate might write in a month for the management of the parking facility. So it's basically whoever doesn't pay could receive a ticket. Those tickets currently are $25 per ticket or whatever. And so that can add up to quite significant sum of money. I kind of put where we were at in July of 2021. They had issued approximately $214,000 in parking violations, and the charges for managed parking spaces generated $213,000 in the same time. So we can see that that's a fairly significant profit for them. They had offered to share 25% of that revenue with us from parking violations with the city. We did originally ask for 50% of that revenue. And so that was our second request for direction, is what should we set that violation revenue? What should we request from them? Now, one thing is we might meet them in the middle. That's the other option, or take the 25%, or we could try to keep working on that issue. But we would like to get this contract completed. I think this is one of the last sticking points that we've got.
What was the agreement as far as the parking tickets on the prior contract or?
On the
agreement
current one
between us?
the current contract we're working under right now, we don't get any of the violation revenue.
And how is the process of those violations collected? Is that all on interstate to collect those, or?
That's something that we proposed changing. So in the past, it was supposed to be an interstate task and they're supposed to handle it. And then the city was supposed to get cases that weren't satisfactorily handled at interstate. In actual practice, what happens is everybody calls me with their ticket the second they get it. And what I do is I usually put them through the interstate process if I can, or if we have a significant customer service issue and I feel like it would be better for me to just manage it for sensitivity reasons, then I'll handle it. And then I actually will interface with interstate at that point. It is a significant time crunch for me sometimes. Sometimes there'll be 10 tickets a week. Sometimes I'll have 20 or 30. Like, it just depends on what's happening. A lot of times residents will reach out to me because I'm a representative of the city that they know and trust, so they know that I can fix it. So that's something that I do think plays into this.
Hey, John,
What's the process of an unpaid violation once it goes past the time that they're supposed to? That's another thing, that's going to be a significant time.
It goes to collections currently from interstate. Now, if in the new process that we proposed in this contract, if a person contests a violation, those violations can come and will be reviewed by our prosecutor on a court day, but not necessarily through a municipal court procedure. She'll just review them as an arbitrary person to say, yes, this ticket was good or bad or whatever. So that would be a new process that we would have. That I think will help quite a bit.
So I think collections are a huge amount of time investment in any business. And if we share the collections, I'm all up for getting the 50%.
I'm sorry, say that again, Scott, you were cutting out.
Sorry. If we share the collection process, if we do a little more than what we've been doing in the past, or if we equally share it, I think we should be getting 50%. So if they're doing the lion's share of collections, then probably leave it at 25%.
They do more than I do. And I was going to propose 35%, is maybe 35% is appropriate. We also don't have really good numbers for how many violations they convert into payment, if you will. So that's the other thing. They've written 214,000 in tickets. I don't know exactly what the collection rate is. I do typically void like any city resident ticket that's received, as long as it wasn't done, if there was a mistake or anything like that, I will take care of it and just make sure they're registered properly. So there are a good number of tickets that go to the wayside that way.
So Interstate's never told us a percentage of the violations that they don't collect. I mean, are they 50% get collected? They've never given us that number, John?
They tell us how many they've written, but not how many are collected.
So when there's a ticket, would you say that the person that has the ticket, if they want to complain, calls you first before they call Interstate? I mean, isn't that the easiest thing for them to do? And then you're the one that facilitates it to Interstate?
Oftentimes that's what happens. And I put them into the Interstate process on the ticket jacket. So a tourist type person would likely call Interstate first because it's written on the jacket. So if it's somebody who's kind of more familiar with our community, I think a lot of those calls come to me.
And how about the tickets that are written to people who rent vehicles and just ignore, the tickets? Do they go to the car rental companies to get their names and facilitate collections from there?
Yes, sir. That's one thing that they have done pretty well.
And when they go to a collection agency, are we going to get part of that revenue when the collection agency who charges them for doing their service, what's left over, we're going to get a percent of that as well?
That's what's proposed, and the percentage has been the sticking point.
Okay. But it sounds to me like also the record keeping in that area is kind of weak. I'm concerned why we cannot get better record keeping from them to make sure that everything comes out.
I have
correct.
we have similar concerns, and there's the next section is deliverables to the city for reporting. And that's another section that we have some requests for direction.
And I see though, that you want reports by the 15th of the month and they are choosing not to do that?
We require reports the Thursday before the council meeting at noon for them to make it in the packet, because we've got to put the packet together and get it to all the council people and all of that. And so we would really like to have those reports before that deadline so they can make it into the packet. Because
Right.
currently that's not the operating procedure.
And that's the
And-
Thursday before this
We were thinking the Thursday
second meeting,
before the
right, John?
second meeting, correct. And so we could change the language to kind of reflect that, because you can't really say the 15th because it could be a different day, but we could say the Thursday before the second meeting.
I remember when this all started, one of the things that the former city council was impressed with was that several of the other communities around us use interstate as well. Have we asked them if they get any better reporting than we've been getting, and what kind of reporting they may get, just to see if there's something that we're missing that they're getting that we should be getting, and if they're getting stuff that we're not getting, why not?
Yes, sir. And in the new contract, we have detailed a list of what we require. And they've actually, before that contract's written, they've already started kind of meeting some of those needs. I think that this is a question of, a new situation, and just them trying to figure out what's most appropriate to tell us. So in the new report, I know it's kind of listed after my staff report, but what we're requesting is demographic information that's available on vehicles. We're requesting number of parkers, turnover rates, violations. I'd really like to see paid violations, which are included in there as well. So we can have kind of a more holistic report that we could just send to city council so that you could have an accurate portrayal of what's happening in the parking facilities.
So John, something that I just thought of that we haven't discussed. So we enter this contract with the revenue splits. We've had some conversation through this parking deck conversation about adjusting the rates. I would say that this is set on, and I'm just going to throw numbers out there. So we put this contract in, and then all of a sudden we say, you know what, the city's going to have to generate a little bit more money from the parking to pay for the parking deck. I don't know if I would be okay with if we raise it, if we doubled it, Interstate would still get their same percentage. So why would they, if the city's going to raise it, why would that let the Interstate Parking Company get more revenue? I mean, they're not doing anything else. They're providing the same service, but we want to increase rates. I just don't know why we would allow them to also increase their revenues. Am I making any sense on that?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
because their fixed costs are covered, regardless.
Right.
That's correct. One of the things that is really, I think, contextually sensitive about Idaho Springs is we have a really constrained parking area that may improve in the future. And so there's a couple of questions that come into play with the parking garage. One is level of service. And so one question is, how many ambassadors do we have on the street that are kind of engaging the parking area at any given time? That's a question that may change when we have the parking structure, because we'd be adding over a quarter of new spaces in our inventory. So I think there's something about that. The other thing is rate structure. I've been working on just what potential financing pro formas might look like for the parking garage with the city, irregardless of the city, just overall on costs and what we have, what we can work with. I think that there may be a conversation to be had about raising parking rates slightly. I think we could simplify our parking rates and also make sure that our revenue is a little bit easier to predict if we charged something like $5 for 3 hours and then $5 an hour after that, because then we don't have like 2 or 3 rates and confuse people. And it'll also stabilize our revenue. We have currently 431 spaces of parking available downtown. We have about 130 users that typically use the lot for free. And so adding these new spaces could potentially change that dynamic quite a bit. When I calculated net and gross revenues for what those parking spaces might do, I looked at it at our current rate structure and also the one I just mentioned, and just kind of looked at what, if there was a debt service, what it would look like, how much of a coverage would we have, what would the revenue look like, all of those things. I think it works with an increase of revenue just because we could require another ambassador. And I think that level of service is the key, The other thing is with the parking structure, there's been some conversations initially about O&M on the parking structure and whether or not the contractor might participate in those costs as well for the structure, since it's really making them money. And that's another thing that I think we need to know what we're talking about as far as parking facilities before we can kind of get into that next piece. And so this contract, I think, is written in a way that we have a little bit of flexibility so that we can request maybe a renegotiation in a year or something like that and just kind of continue talking. Colorado law doesn't let you enter into it's something that is an aspect of Colorado law to just kind of make sure that you have a way to have that negotiated contract for a municipality. So we would have that ability later if Interstate was amenable.
Well, just from my experience, garage parking is always more expensive than street parking. It's not always as convenient because the street parking, other than when we have the streets blocked off like we do, but it's fairly convenient. And that's where you want to rotate those people in and out as much as you can. And in the garages, we usually let them park longer, but the rate is always higher. First of all, it's not as convenient. They got to walk a little further. But secondly, you're giving them indoor parking as opposed to street parking. So garage parking in my world has always been more expensive, and people pay for it. And we also, and I don't think we have it here as much, but we had football games and things like that. We always raised the rates when there was special events. I don't know if we'll ever get to that volume, but you never know the way things are going. It's something we got to keep open, as well as if special events come up. And even though, we've got the outdoor parking, and this is long-term, it's hypothetical, special events usually cost a little more as well.
I would love to talk to council about doing something like that on the 4th of July next year. Our technology allows for it. And I think if we had the direction to do that, we could potentially look at a program.
Okay, good work, John. Is this going to be on our?
John, one more question, Mike. Going back to the collections, John, you said they have their own collection agency they use, or it does come to the city once it goes so far if it's uncollectible?
It can. So basically what happens if there's an appeal to the violation, it would come to the city through that new process I mentioned with the prosecutor. If there's no response, they would issue, for instance, as Councilman Cacavelli said, it would go to the rental car companies for an unpaid violation, who would pay it and then charge the individual. If it's someone who's not in a rental car, it would go to their collection agency that they have. And we didn't dictate any process about how that needs to happen.
And we've been working with Carmen quite a bit to try to figure out an appeal system. If somebody wasn't satisfied with what Interstate has told them, that we would see how we could create an appeal system through the city at that point. I don't think that we've gotten there with that direction yet.
Mayor and Council, can I clarify the points of direction just for the one that will come to you? I have written notice 60, you're okay with the longer rate of 60 days, 90 days, whatever it comes to. On the split of the violation revenue, are you comfortable with us? Are you comfortable with 25%? Do you want us to try to negotiate a little bit higher than that?
I would say higher just because of your time.
Yeah,
I'd say 35%.
There you go.
Yeah, John, I think you were indicating 35% sounded equitable to you.
Yes.
And I think if anybody knows, John does, since it's his time.
Okay, the only other questions I had is the staff reporting. You're comfortable with us requesting that by our staff report deadline for their deliverables? Yeah. Okay.
On our for our second meeting of the month.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I don't think we need it. I don't think we need it twice a month.
Okay.
Provided for our second meeting of the month.
The only other question I had was they had a question about ambassador levels, staffing levels. I had a request in the original contract staffing levels per season, so that in the high tourism seasons, we'd have more staff here. They had proposed something that they think is more appropriate, which is basically that they'd like to have 2 ambassadors on weekends and holidays where possible. I would like to amend that language to say 2 ambassadors during the high, whenever we determine, like June 15th through August through September 1st, whatever it is, that kind of high tourism season, that we would have 2 ambassadors every day during that period, just because we know, we don't really get a slowdown there. Not that we do anytime, but that way we'd always have at least 1 ambassador on duty, and then we'd have 2 on weekends, holidays, and then those high summer months.
Agreed.
Didn't they originally promise us 4 during the peak seasons?
Yes, sir.
I think the summer months there needs to be more. I mean, it's just, I'd like to see 3 to 4 people out there in the summer months, and 1 or 2 during Christmas, in between Thanksgiving and the first of the year. And then, probably just 1 is sufficient the rest of the time. It benefits them as well by having more people out there. I mean, they're writing citations, and that's not what this is all about. The whole idea of this is getting the parking spaces to turn over. But I don't see how 1 or 2 people, because we've expanded this parking, and they've got to enforce residential area too. This isn't just about our parking lots and our streets around the downtown. They've also got to be able to enforce in the residential areas, because was the number 1 key to this whole idea, is to give that relief to the residents and give them some breathing room. And I just don't think they can do it with 2 people on a summer day. I'm just not, or maybe 2 during the week in the summer and 3 or 4 on the weekends.
The weekends actually here start on Thursday night, Friday. I mean, they're expanding as far as the volume. Also, before I forget, they don't want to. They want to use their uniforms. They don't want to. Did I read that right? And are they? Can you pick them out? Are their uniforms identifiable?
Yes, sir. It was actually a little funny, because they said that they say that the reason why is they want to have a standard uniform across all their municipalities, but the uniform for Idaho Springs is identified by a logo that says Park Idaho Springs on it. So we are getting a custom Idaho Springs uniform. It's a blue hat with a black parking P on it, and then a yellow vest with a logo. We also have an ambassador who's a local woman who is deaf, and she is going to be adding a patch to her. So hers will be a little bit non-standard. It'll just say she's deaf on the back, because people have been yelling at her and not understanding why she doesn't see them when she's not facing them. So that's the only modification.
Because my experience is people who write tickets get a little shy once in a while, because they do take abuse.
Is there a way to improve signage in the residential areas? I mean, does anybody ever argue the fact that they didn't see the signs or something on their violations?
Yeah, we have over 400 signs in a 4-block radius, basically, and it's a lot. Now, what I think we might do, and this is kind of a future step, but this kind of goes along with the downtown master plan that's been that there's been work done on this summer that you will see early this fall. I think that there's a good case to be made that a signage plan for the city would be beneficial to all of us. And I think that we could look at what parking signage looks like. Breckenridge does quite a bit different than us. They have a large sign on each corner of each block. And then in those boundaries, we know that they have paid parking and residential only parking. Interstate has recommended that we may place sandwich boards type signs at the entrance and kind of exit of the paid parking area. So that'd be somewhere by 240 and then maybe around the bridge. That's something that we could do in the interim. But I do think that we need to constantly think about our signage down there and just try to improve it as much as possible.
Okay, anything else, council, on this item?
Yeah, I get some complaints about registration for residents and how to improve that, because, well, it's like me, I didn't know you had to do it every year. I almost got a ticket. Yeah.
That was something that was changed when we came to council in the previous iteration of this contract, and we need to make sure that there is a way to clear the roles, if you will, of people who were residents of the city and are now not currently residents of the city. I think it's actually I believe we said every 2 years is what it was for a resident. We could even make it every 3 years. The length of time is not the most critical factor, just so that there's that process that happens. The other thing is employee permits. There've got to be about 250 employee permits issued in the parking area currently. And some of those employees are no longer with us. And so what we did is institute a quarterly registration for employee vehicles only. So that doesn't count county residents, doesn't count city residents, just employees, that they would have to re-register their vehicle. Now that can be done through a business owner. For instance, Marcel from Westbound used to just send me a list of his employees and I would send that to Interstate and register them. We do want to make that process as easy as possible. We tried to make a system where the website you could verify on the website if you were registered or not. And the cost associated with it just didn't quite work. So I think the best possible way to do this is Interstate should provide you with a notice that you need to re-register your vehicle. If that is not happening or somebody has had that experience where it's not, if they could just contact me, yeah, I can contact you maybe tomorrow and we can go through that and make sure it's right. But I will correct that with Interstate because they should send you a notice that your permit is expired.
I haven't received any.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't receive any, and almost got a ticket. The guy said, "Okay, never mind."
I will follow up with both of you in the morning, and anyone else who has an issue, and we'll fix it.
I re-registered online, so
Okay.
I'm good.
I did not.
Okay. All right. Thanks, John. Let's get those
Thanks, John.
minutes done, and we'll take a look at the final draft for the parking agreement. Okay. Our last item on our agenda tonight is the Albert Frag Quarry expansion update. This is another, everybody's familiar with the Frag Quarry down on Highway 6. And then we took comments for Bob Young is looking at doing a quarry up Central City Parkway a couple of miles. And now this has surfaced that this was the first I've heard about it, that that the Frag Quarry was looking at an expansion, and it looks like over 400-acre expansion. So it's going to be quite large. So what I want to do with that is let Jared kind of speak on this and see if there's anything that council wants to propose or make comment. The state's still allowing us to do that. So Jared.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor. So before you this evening, as the mayor kind of described, is a second quarry item. So back in May, a letter was sent out to the city. We do not have recollection of receiving this letter and therefore did not make any comments, did not bring it before council at that time. Since then, we have heard from some residents of Floyd Hill, and their email sent to the state with comments is attached to this document for your review, that this quarry was proposed for expansion. So staff has since contacted the state, asked a few questions, received some plans to take a look at. So the current quarry is about 285 acres, and the planned expansion is over 464 additional acres. So it's proposed to expand both east and west of the existing quarry. Staff has provided the letter in your packet that we were supposed to receive from the state. We've also provided a map of the proposed quarry expansion. And then, as I mentioned, the documentation from the folks at Floyd Hill. So tonight I would ask if council has any comments that they wish to make, any questions that they would have. We can still submit them to the state. However, the state will pass them on to the applicant, but the applicant is not, the quarry expansion applicant is not required to address those comments. The state said that they would encourage them to do so, but they're not required to. So at that, I would ask if there are any comments or direction from City Council. Thank you.
So how long will this extend the life of the quarry?
I apologize, Councilor Curtis. I am not certain of that.
Okay. Yeah. Do you know if they're going to take more water? Use more water rights or not? Probably not.
Sorry, I do not know some of those details. I tried to do some research. I did not get quite as many documents from this applicant
Do we know how much water they take now?
I do not know how much water they take, but I do know that they receive, they lease water rights from Central City.
And would Central City share that with us?
They may. I can inquire of them.
And can't we take those numbers and fold them into this addition of 464.17 acres to determine and answer John's question? I mean, it's gonna almost double, at least 75% increase in water.
Yeah, I'd still like Idaho Springs to see if it'd be a court case. It might be a battle to supply with them with some raw water out of the creek, but I don't know.
Jim, you had comments?
Is it the 200 or 400 acres or something, right? Yeah.
So the existing quarry is over 200. The proposed expansion is over 400 acres.
Who is the 400 acres their property, the Fry property?
Yes, it is. They own the property.
Then leave them alone. It's their property.
Well, Jim, but it's our water in Clear Creek. We're talking about the water. I don't think we're opposed to the quarry per se, that's the discussion, but I think the water quality is part of it.
And again, the process is this isn't city property. We're just allowed comments on the state review, right? Just
There
like
we go.
We
other
can
quarry.
make comment. This is nothing that's going to come to the city for any kind of ruling. Well, I don't even know who it goes to. I don't know if it goes to the county. I'm not sure. No, is it just done through the state?
Yeah, the State Department of Natural Resources, Mike.
Okay.
Jared, I have a serious concern that this is the second time the city has been notified outside of an appropriate time frame. And I'm just wondering, does the state say that we were notified? And I just, how would that happen? I don't understand how we're missing these notices.
So the first, the Young Quarry expansion, we were not notified. We heard about that from some residents. I believe Mr. Curtis or Councilor Curtis brought our attention to that item, and we followed up accordingly. The state did admit that we were not notified correctly. We were not notified at all, and we should have been, and hence they rectified that situation. In this case, they did provide a letter from back in May with notice. As I previously stated, it's something that staff certainly has no recollection of receiving.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. I kind of got on Jim's case there. I come from an old mining family, and I have no problem with natural resources being used. That's not a problem. The one thing that we mentioned on the Young proposed quarry as well is the insult to water quality that might be draining off of the waste piles and so on down Clear Creek, because that impacts Idaho Springs directly, because any reduction of that water quality results in a reaction from the Stanley Lake cities. And we end up spending a lot of money on legal fees. And along with all the other upstream users. And so my main concern is to control low quality runoff into Clear Creek that impacts the intakes downstream.
And I think that the same comments is kind of what we discussed before. Wildlife, how's it going to affect that? Water quality, air quality, and things like that. That we should continue in Colorado and Clear Creek County, always be on top of and aware of. Our water quality, as Bob was saying, we get a lot of pushback from the Stanley Lakes area. They always look at our water rights and if we're using them properly. And anytime that there's any slight increase of ammonia or anything coming down, man, they start pointing their fingers at Idaho Springs. So for us to be aware and concerned about those types of things, air and water and wildlife, it would be the comments that I would suggest that we send to them as well.
I mean, they're going to be looking at all that stuff anyways. We're just going to say, this is what we would like you to look at and make sure that you look at.
Yeah. I think the comments should be almost identical, really, to the young Quarry, really, without a lot of differentiation, really.
Yep. That's kind of what I'm suggesting.
With council's permission, I can absolutely tweak those comments and better tailor make them to this application, submit them to the state.
We have a time period when we have to have them back to the state.
So technically our time period has expired. However, the hearing for this quarry, I believe, is on October 8th. So we definitely want to get them in before October 8th. I would prefer to get them in this week so that there is a couple weeks time frame in which the state can give them to the applicant, and the applicant can choose to comment or respond to them if they want.
Yeah, I would ask that you prepare that that letter for us, Jared, and send it off to him.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Okay, council, any other comments on the Frag Quarry topic? All right, so that's the end of our work session. One thing that I do want to let everybody know, there's next Monday night is going to be a pretty big meeting, and we wanted to make sure that we were prepared for what turnout could be. We're not sure what kind of turnout will come out, but our plan, because next Monday night we will be hearing the 4 Points rezoning application. And so we are going to go live and we're going to be doing it from Carlson Elementary School. That way we'll be able to set up the basketball area with enough seats that if we have a big turnout, that we can accommodate that. We don't want to run into what we ran into with our paid parking, where we had 180 people show up and we only had room for, for 40 people. So we wanted to make sure we had a venue big enough. And we also wanted to make sure that we could have people come in person and make comment. I think with a project like this and a rezoning like this, I think it's to advantage of not only council, but citywide and countywide to be able to come in person and face the developers and the council and speak their opinions. So it'll be 7 o'clock next Monday night at Carlson Elementary School. All right. And Art, make sure that your vehicle's registered, because if you park out there, you might get a ticket.
I have a duplicate cruiser, looks like Idaho Police Station people, so I'll just park it.
All right, Andy, you have something else?
Yeah, I just want to make sure everybody's aware that masks will be required. That is a school district requirement. And of course, we're also requiring masks at City Hall. So be prepared to have a mask. We will have some on hand, but we just ask people to bring those with them. But there should be plenty of room to spread out.
Okay, any other thoughts, council?
Is there going to be some kind of PA system for us to speak that everybody can hear, or?
We have a portable battery powered PA that's pretty loud, and we've used it for these meetings before.
The one piece that John's been working on, he's with logistics, is the connectivity there with the internet, and making sure we're able to live stream the meeting as we do with all of our public meetings. That's the one thing that still needs to be nailed down, but we're quite confident we can work that out for the meeting on Monday.
And I know, when I asked Carmen at our last meeting about notification, she, if I remember right, felt that our meeting was enough, or was almost enough, that people should know that, be meeting on the 27th. Have we chose to announce it any other way? Through the newspaper or any signs prior to the meeting, like a few days at a time, to make sure that everyone is aware? Or do you feel comfortable that people are aware?
I would say that we, through our normal platforms, our city website and some of our Facebook websites and things like our Facebook pages. As far as mailing any notices, Corinne, has she picked up on it and going to put something? Well, it would be too late. she would have to already had it in this paper this week to notify. I don't know if she called and got information or put it in the paper for tomorrow or
Okay.
Wednesday.
I just don't want to hear anyone say we didn't, do it properly.
Maybe we ought to ask K-Goat Radio to broadcast it as well to, they could, I guess they could figure out some way to make comment, but that might be another option to make sure that anybody that wants to listen through the radio could do that too.
Just a thought.
The one thing though, it's only about maybe 4 blocks away. And so people can adjust and come on up if they miss it, as long as we have a notice on the door at City Hall
Mayor
as
Hellman,
well.
I have an extensive email list too, that's several hundred names at this point. It's not perfect, but I will also put it out there. I think I can probably reach a good 1,000 people through our current channels. And I know that's not a perfect solution, but we will make every effort to make sure that everyone is aware.
Because I've spoken to people who don't live just exactly around there, that live, several blocks away, close to the west side of the east side, and they're interested in it as well. So I think it's a city issue.
Where do we have notices posted at? Just on the property, Andy?
Yes. And another thing we could do, and we did this with a previous project, is we can send an updated notice to those who get the formal notice originally, because it is a change of location. So I think it's certainly appropriate that we do that. That is something that we can send out this week as well, to make sure those who are within, is it 300 feet, Jared? 300, right, okay. And then also through our social media network, John mentioned his email network, but also through social media, we can push out this notice as well.
Hey, John, would you mind contacting Karen Quambach, or I believe Marcia's still the principal this year, see if we can use your little message board on the school to put it on there, city council public meeting held here on, why don't you contact them, see if they'll let us use that for the remainder of this week?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'll go wear sandwich kind of signs and just parade back and forth. You know how you put them over your butt.
Sign spinner.
You need the exercise, Art?
Yeah, I do. I really do. Like my wife, I do.
Okay. All right. Well, good meeting, everybody. Thanks for everybody's participation. Have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next Monday night at 7 o'clock at Carlson Elementary.
Everybody safe out there.